Hi guys, welcome to the Sorry I Don't podcast. This is a film podcast where we talk about films that are ridiculous. Maybe they're amazing, maybe they're terrible. And this week we are discussing Dune, the film you've all seen. No, we are discussing the 1984 Dune, which is very ridiculous and possibly amazing. This week on the Sorry I Don't podcast. And of course, joined with my co-hosts.
Yep, that's us. Abby.
Yeah.
And Claude.
Claude.
Hey.
And Swanee.
It's kind of like real religion. Like, you know, sorry if you are religious, but it's all a load of shit. And
people believe and call him Lisa Nagaib.
so I don't want to get into the vibe. Why would I want to get into the stinky guy vibe?
Good old ball.
How to their eyes glow. So you can teach them how to make their eyes glow. And then, but it's like a saw spoof.
So, yeah. Dune, obviously, biggest film in the world right now. You know, the new one, part 2, second half of the first book, has just made over like 700 million, close to 800 million at the box office, which is a lot.
Yeah,
you know what
unsurprisingly, I've not seen either of them.
Yes, of course, which we'll get into. But yeah, made a lot of money on essentially a kind of new IP. Obviously, you know, the 84 film was made, but it didn't do very well. Famously didn't do well. And there was like some TV shows, but they were like low budget. But coming out to cinema and doing very high numbers, 400 million for the first one, 700 million for the second one. It's pretty good for like a new sort of thing in that market. Like normally those heights are reached for, you know, like Avatar, Titanic, or usually franchise films, Star Wars.
So usually shiters.
Not
Star Wars, Titanic and Avatar.
The second time you've almost been inadvertently turned against Star Wars just by my chat, which is very funny. But yeah, just so it's doing really well. So we thought, okay, that's actually a genuinely quite good film. But you know what one isn't, or is regarded by many as one of the worst films ever made, is the 1984 Dune. Directed by David Lynch.
One of our favourite directors.
One of our favourite directors. Great
huge
director.
Twin Peaks fans.
Huge Twin Peaks fans. Here. Always trying to think of ways that I could get us to talk about Twin Peaks on the podcast. We'll see. But, you know, he did Mulholland Drive, Blue Velvet, The Elephant Man. That was one of his more commercial things. Even weird little things like Eraserhead. He's done Twin Peaks, of course. And he's done his own music career. He's a painter as well. All this stuff is like
the weather.
Well, that's no reason. He's one of those rare filmmakers, David Lynch, that doesn't. He's not a huge film buff. He doesn't watch a lot of films. Like he likes what he likes, but he doesn't watch a lot of new films or old films. The whole reason he made films is because he wanted to make his paintings move. That was his whole chat.
That's
he
very
made
cool.
These weird paintings of scenes. He's like, oh, I want to see it move. So that's why he made films. So then when you realise, you know, this kind of filmography, like Mulholland Drive was voted one of the best films of the 20th century by directors on a poll, all this stuff. Like Blue Velvet is really influential. Twin Peaks, a cult TV show that changed TV. It's very surprising when some people learn that he's the guy who made the famous box office bomb of Dune in 1984. So, did you guys know anything about this film before I suggested watching it?
Yeah. I'd seen, like, the new Dunes.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the second one recently. But I loved the first one. I got the book. Was a huge fan. And then when we started watching Twin Peaks last year, I'd, like, just absolutely fell in love with Kyle MacLachlan and David Lynch. And I was like, oh, that's interesting that he's done a Dune film, but I'd heard before that it was pish.
Yeah.
And it is pish, but it does have charm to it.
Right?
It has charm to it, I think, because I love Kyle MacLachlan so much, but it is also really fucking shite as well.
Abby, did you have any Well, two questions. Did you have any idea about Dune before watching this movie, or do you have any idea about Dune having now watched this movie?
No.
To both.
To everything. To all of the questions that might be asked of me on this podcast. No.
I mean, really tried. We made sure she stayed awake for the whole thing.
I did. I've fallen asleep through some of my favourite films that we've watched this podcast, films I love, and this had like everything in it that would make me fall asleep in a film. And there was touch and go moments, but I clawed my way to the end.
I think I was throwing something at you at one point.
Yeah,
perhaps. The clap.
I was being denied
that's the thing I do.
blankets. It was so cold.
You were being denied blankets and comfort. But this is the thing I do sometimes. If Abby's starting to drift off, and I don't want to keep saying to her, wake up, because it will annoy her, I'll just make a really loud noise. I was like, whoa. You know what I mean? Like,
is that on purpose?
Yes, that is deliberate. I do all that to wake you up. I'm now revealing my secrets.
Oh my god. I just thought you were clumsy.
Yeah, because I am, but
I feel so manipulated.
I'm sorry.
But
it's
I
worth
have, yeah, I mean, yeah.
You've seen Twin Peaks
Maybe
now?
not this time, though.
Well, fair.
I haven't seen any of the new Dune stuff. I'm not aware of the book. I don't know the story. I've obviously seen like clips and memes and things because it's big right now. But I love like films with like bad CGI, like old films with bad CGI and stuff.
Yeah.
But it occurred to me how bad this must have been at the time, because everything that we think is charming about it, like all the nostalgia and stuff that we think is like, gives it that kind of like hokey but warm feel. At the time, that would have just been like going to see a Marvel movie.
Cutting
with really
edge
bad
technology.
CGI.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this is in the wake of Star Wars. Do you know what I mean? Like the Star Wars trilogy has just concluded, I think, like roughly the same time. And obviously that was like huge. Like Star Wars was so big, like it made Star Trek that was on TV go, we should try a movie as well, which was also bad. So it's really weird. In the Star Wars, there's a lot of similarities between the Star Wars idea and mythos with Dune. Which
Having also never seen Star Wars,
Yeah.
this film is exactly what I've always imagined Star Wars to be like.
It's not like that.
You're gonna
You could, if I didn't know, if it wasn't so famous and I didn't know who was in them,
you would have thought this was
if
Star
you
Wars.
put this on and said this is Star Wars, I probably
Interesting.
would have believed you.
Interesting, because Star Wars, by contrast, is very fucking accessible, whereas this film is not accessible
accessible.
I
at
can
all.
follow Star Wars. I've seen bits of the first one.
Well,
I
what-
did fall asleep through a lot
So
of it, but
we will not do that. We will make sure, as I say, we have methods to keep you
Having
awake.
it's obviously said in the last episode and accidentally in this episode, like making fun of Star Wars, I absolutely adore Star Wars, and I just know from knowing you very well that it's just not for you. And if Star Wars isn't for you, and that's a franchise that I absolutely adore, I know that Dune 1984 is not going to be for you at all.
I think
either.
she could like the original trilogy because of the silly hokiness. And I think anyone can go, that's charming. That's what I think. I don't think she'll love it.
She doesn't care about guns or fights or
But she likes hokey
aliens.
silliness. She likes a family-rousing adventure.
She's just a little lady.
I know she is. I know she is. But we're trying to broaden her horizons. So we will do probably a Star Wars film on the podcast. I'm very tempted to do The Phantom Menace because this is the worst one.
No,
but
Abby
we
will just sleep through that entire thing.
There's
We're
no
not doing The
point.
Phantom
There's
Menace.
no point doing that. We could do it at a later point.
But we're not doing Star Wars. We're doing Dune.
No, but the reason I'm talking about Star Wars so much is Star Wars is very much a case in point of how to do sci-fi.
Yes.
And obviously Star Wars, so Dune was based on a book, which I have here, which I'm reading. What's the word for it? 1965. So this is all way before Star Wars came out in 1977. And you can see those direct parallels. Like this is kind of, for some people, this did to sci-fi what Lord of the Rings did to fantasy. Maybe not quite as dramatic as that, but in terms of a lot of stuff, yeah. Especially when you know the links with Star Wars.
Well, it just made it really boring. What, like Lord of the Rings did for fantasy.
That's not what I did. Very clearly not what I did. And you're also a fan of Dune, so it doesn't make sense what you just said. You also said you were a fan of the book.
This film, though.
This film, fair enough. Okay, and that was kind of the point I was going to head towards. It's a very dense book. There's a reason that they made it into 2 films. Yeah? Because it's fucking, this is all
Wait,
plot.
is Dune done?
It's 3 films.
Oh,
They're
okay.
going
There's
to
a third
do
one
the
coming.
second book, which is much shorter, which would be interesting. But that's been announced like last week, which is great. But yeah, so my kind of relationship to this is obviously you hear about it being kind of this book, this lofty sci-fi show. And now growing up, I never was a huge sci-fi person. I like Star Wars, I kind of like that because it's kind of fantasy dressed up as sci-fi. I wasn't a huge Star Trek fan, Doctor Who, that sort of thing. I like the occasional thing, but so I was like, what's this Dune all about? And then looked at the film, saw a bit of the film, was like, fucking, like, I saw that first fight scene when the CGI comes out for the first time.
My favourite part.
Abby's favourite part. Everything the blocky, terrible CGI came out and they were going, do, beep, 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 boop. She was like, this is amazing.
Yeah, I was like I was like head empty, no thoughts. I have no idea what the fuck is going on in this scene right now, but I could watch this all day. And I just wanted the film to just be that.
For the whole time.
I would have preferred it.
Yeah. No one else would have, which is hilarious to think about because obviously we've seen all these great special effects and then we come and see what this is like and it is a bit silly. Right, so my relationship to it. So obviously, you know, you try and read books, you try and learn stuff and you try and learn, right, where, if it all comes from Dune must be pretty impressive, right? So I'd seen that film, saw those, I turned it off after that weird CGI sequence. I went, right, done with that. And then looked at the plot and then didn't read it with context. I was just like, this is just the typical hero's journey story. I was like, why is this such a big deal?
Was it?
Well, we'll get to that. But that's kind of what it is. So I was like, what's so special about it? And then I looked up later stuff from it, and it was like the fourth book is called The God Emperor of Dune. And if we can get a little photo of that original title on screen, this is what really made me go, okay, what the fuck is this thing about? I was just very evocatively drawn to this image of a worm man. A man inside a big worm, and he's half and half. I was like, what's that about? And it's crazy. It's nuts. And it's worth it. But you got to go through this first. And then I suddenly got more of an appreciation for it. Obviously, David Lynch. I was like, why would he do Dune? That makes no sense. Out of all the things he's done, it makes no sense. But then when you watch it, you start seeing all these little things. You're like, oh shit, that is very much why Lynch would be drawn to that. Like, you know, the idea of like mind power, consciousness, expanding dreams and all that. But then I watched the film and I was like, oh no.
This film is a nightmare to anybody who
has no idea
or has no idea and doesn't like that kind of genre of film anyway, because it just doesn't make it, like, obviously, because I've read a bit of Dune and I've seen the two new films, I knew what was going on, but there's no fucking chance that I'd have any idea what was going on, even if I focused my hardest, if that was all I'd seen.
Yeah.
It is pants.
Because famously, Lynch didn't get a final cut. It was
if Lynch had got final cut, it would have just been another, let's
be
be real, it would have been
4 hours.
another fucking 3 hours of the same shite.
It was meant to be a 4-hour film. And look, there are issues with
That shouldn't exist. Like, I love David Lynch, but there's no need for a 4-hour film. That's not a film.
I disagree.
That's a series.
Yes, but this is the time when series weren't getting done like that. You would never get that made.
But you had like sequels. There's no need for a 4-hour film.
I agree. Well,
and that's obviously why we do sequels now.
In this kind of film, absolutely doesn't need to be 4 hours. However, the like kind of fan edit of this film, which is an extra 40 minutes put back in, is a lot better. It makes a lot more deleted footage.
Oh, is that accessible? I thought you were saying people were just like making up scenes,
no,
splicing them into Dune.
Terrible. It is called the Spice Dive Reddit, because spice is a thing in this. But it's like an extra 40 minutes of footage that they were able to get, and it's been recently released in HD. Find it on YouTube. Well worth a watch. However, that's not what we watched. We watched the 2-hour. Like, doesn't make any sense, and this is the story that you kind of need it to make sense, because it's all about,
because it's quite confusing.
It's quite confusing. It's about these great houses, you know, these different space houses.
And if you don't make it accessible and interesting, really, like, the base of what we're actually talking about is kind of boring, but the actual story is not boring.
Yeah.
But if you tell it like that, it's going to be
you're just having a chat.
Nonsensical and boring.
You're just having a chat about themes and philosophy, which is fine for chats sometimes, but it's not. It's not
film content.
It's not a film, and this is why a lot of people said it was really difficult to make into a film. And I was like, no. The issue was, why would you pick slow, ponderous David Lynch to do your 2-hour action movie, Star Wars beater Dune? That was never going to happen. And it's just a weird clash. But many people have tried to bring it before Dune, before David Lynch. Like weird directors like Mexican director Jodorowsky, known for his weird ass fucking movies. I've got the painting on my wall, like that one of the weird paintings on my wall.
I was gonna say you would need to narrow it down. You've got a lot of weird.
Yeah,
paintings.
he famously tried to work on it for years, but he was planning on doing an 8-hour movie, and no one wanted to fund that. So again, 8 hours of that. What the fuck? So yeah, it's a big credit to Denis Villeneuve, who actually did the new ones, that they're actually good and accessible and liked. But yes, so this one.
Before we get into it, I think that what we need to do is we need to get the plot rundown from Abby, who was like,
that's what I was going to say.
Basically half conscious and like brain dead throughout the
Well, see, the
entirety
thing
of
is,
this
she was
film.
fully conscious at a lot, but I could see her struggling.
Yeah.
So, because obviously it's a film, big, great houses. You need to make this easy and accessible. So, Abby,
I didn't know that that's what it was about until you said that there.
Right, no interruptions. Go. What is Dune about? 1984.
So there's the main guy. He is the chosen one, and he is not a girl, and that upsets what I thought was his mum and his gran.
yeah,
Apparently not his mum and his gran.
It is his mum.
Oh,
his mum, but not his grand.
Right. So he comes from this little tribe of women, and they are like, we want to have a woman who can have the son is Jesus, but he's there, and they're like, but you can't be Jesus because we wanted that to happen like a bit later, I guess. But like, the whole point was that they wanted to have the chosen one. So he's like, I'm the chosen one. I don't know why, but then he goes to another planet because he doesn't feel pain, because he puts his hand in the box and then he's fine. So no, he does feel pain, but he survives it, and then he goes to another planet. I honestly can't tell you why. And he meets other people there, and there's like a little army of people, and there's a worm, and you can't get eaten by the worm because then you die. And he makes the army people like him more. And there's a battle, and some of his friends die, and then he's like with them, and he's like, you can all rally behind me, and I'm going to show you, what is it he teaches them how to do? Their eyes glow. So you can teach them how to make their eyes glow. And then... and then they all love him, so he gets really full of himself. He's like, I am the Messiah, and but the woman who's not his gran, wait, there's a baddie. There's an evil
What
guy.
is he doing?
He wants to kill him, I assume, because that's what villains tend to want. And so he wants to kill the main guy, but now he's got his wee army people on the desert planet, and they're like, no, we love him, and his not gran woman, she's actually didn't realise that she was connected to the evil guy, but they're in cahoots. And then at the end, they have a battle, and he kills the villain, and everyone's like, do you know what? Probably just easier if we accept that he is like our leader now.
You know what? That was
Yeah, fair.
100% correct. So next week, guys, we're going to do... So
Oh, there's a wee girl!
there is a wee
He's
girl
got a
then.
creepy wee sister who's like,
Yeah, she
she's
is.
doing stuff.
Absolutely. So,
That was
surprisingly
succinct.
cogent.
Yeah. I mean, they don't want him to be their leader because he makes their eyes glow. That's maybe the only like
No, he teaches them how to make their eyes glow.
No.
no, he doesn't.
It's okay.
the spice makes your eyes glow.
The spice, which allows.
spice.
Yes, that's the whole reason they go to that planet, because it's the only planet in the universe
That
can produce
produces
spice.
spices.
And spice opens your mind. Consciousness is like a big psychedelic drug, but even better. And
It's
it
all about
focuses you,
trade.
and you can also space travel with
Love
it.
a movie
You
about
can
trade.
space travel.
And obviously the bad guys are like, no, we want that. That's why they're wanting to kill him, because they're like, we want control of the spice. It's all about the spice. The spice is the most important thing. And the spice is only on this planet because it's produced by the worms, which doesn't get explained in
Right.
this film, but that's
It's,
the case.
look, it's plots within plots, but that was actually surprisingly succinctly
yeah,
done.
that was good.
The issue is, though, immediately when you start, you mention something that's kind of like a little half revelation midway through the movie, but obviously when you've regurgitated it, it's as your first thought, which immediately comes into the issue with this book. And it's like the flow of information. How do you communicate all these things to people in a way that, it's got to lead on to the next thing. Like Game of Thrones does it so well. But that's what it's meant to do. And it didn't do that because you're sitting giving me this plot in like the backwards way of, I love that your first thing was basically what we said to you, and what was that about? The first thing we said is, or you're like, why?
No, it was the
girl.
grandmother.
Yeah.
What's she called? Is she
The
called
Reverend Mother.
The Reverend
which
Mother.
is like a title for like a mother superior and a nun.
The Reverend
convent.
Mother at the very end in the last scene is with the villain.
Which one? Baron Harkonnen, the ginger-haired one, the big
Which
fat,
one is she with?
The big
float away
warty
guy.
the big warty guy.
And they're like, you need to calm it. But they're both together.
Yeah, you need to count it down.
But they're both together, and I didn't realise that they even knew each other. I thought they were totally separate entities.
But also, I think actually, with
and
that,
I thought that at
also,
that point,
I'm gonna jump in. The Baron's not in that scene because he's dead just before it. That was the Emperor.
who's the other guy?
The Emperor.
The Emperor.
Yeah,
So the Emperor and the Grand Reverend Mother.
not grand. No grand.
I keep. I didn't realise that they knew each other at all. I thought they were on separate planets. I didn't think that they had met.
So the first scene has them meeting. The first scene has them in cahoots talking about this plot. The very opening scene to the film, after a nice little establishment.
Oh
very
my
funny.
god!
Look,
You thought it was a different guy, and you're
You're
like,
just like, who are these
when
new
did they
people?
meet? Literally at the beginning.
But to my credit, in this film, there are just chunks of information and plot missing, and
Yes,
I only
yeah.
know that because you said it.
well, absolutely. That's why I said. That's why we wanted you to do this, because it's already a complex story. If you're not engaged in these sort of like high fantasy, big dramas, sort of political machination stories, they're already hard to get into. But there's a reason why these shows are often regarded as good, because they lead you by the hand and they pull you into it and they layer on. So that means that means this, that means that. You're just like, oh my God, you're so invested, and suddenly revelations, dramatic stuff happening. Amazing. The book does it. This film does not do it. This film really struggles to tell you stuff. It struggles so much it has to have like 2 or 3 different fucking opening prologues.
So many prologues.
So that's the cut down version. See the 40-minute version? It adds another one on.
Mere log, wee boy.
Mere log?
Not pro. We want the log,
Use the log.
not the prologue. The log.
That's very funny. That took me way too long to get that one. Hilariously enough, it's actually the main character's logs that he listens to in the new one that actually gives a lot of this backstory, which is a very good way of doing it.
Also, there's a woman speaking at this bit. Yeah.
At the beginning.
At the beginning, and she's this kind of mystical looking woman.
Yeah.
And she's like,
The Princess Ireland.
yep, and she's like,
She opens up.
there's a planet and blah blah. It's like the girl from the Never Ending Story kind
Yeah,
of
it's
vibes.
very much. She opens up. We open up in Princess Ireland, giving this. They basically going, this is the year 1091. The
is the
spice
year
melange
1091.
allows space travel, expands minds. This is our universe. It can only be mined on one planet, the desert planet Arrakis, also known as Dune. That's like the prologue.
Kyle MacLachlan, when he's the Messiah, gets a wee girlfriend, and it's all like they were meant to be together, they're soulmates, blah blah blah. She appears to him in dreams.
Yep.
Yep.
At the end of the movie, when it came up like Princess Ireland, I was like, who was that? And you were like, oh, it's the girl who does the bit at the start. I was like, but they look so similar in this film, the way that they're styled and their role and stuff. I was like, why wouldn't they have the soulmate who speaks to him in dreams doing the prologue at the beginning?
So
In a dream, like it just didn't make sense.
The reason why it's against the adaptation from the book. So in the book, each chapter begins with like an in-world recording from Princess Ireland commenting on it as if it's a real history. She would be like, log 76, Paul came to Arrakis and da-da-da-da-da.
And who is she?
So
She's the Emperor's daughter.
She's the Emperor's daughter, and at the end, when Paul basically gets them all to give him power, the whole agreement is she will marry Paul, our main character, Kyle MacLachlan, so that the houses will all back in. It's a political marriage, so no war can actually really begin.
So let's
So she becomes really
let's
big
take
in
it
the next
back
place.
to like
Sorry, listeners.
let's take it back to like kind of you know, medieval times where like you'd marry families together for power so that their
And stop
offspring,
wars.
and stop wars, so that their offspring would have like kind of rights to all these different kind of properties
And
and
titles
kingdoms and titles and all that
that
kind
you
of
can
thing.
give to your family, which is
Yeah.
key. You set your family up
So-
for life.
He's fallen in love with this wee lassie,
But she's just a wee lassie.
but she's just a wee lassie. She's not the princess. So,
Right.
which is why
Well, she becomes his concubine. So, like, what Paul's mother is to the Duke, that's what she'll become for him. And even though he's married to the princess, he'll be free to do what he wants with his concubine. And which obviously brings problems in the later stuff when it comes to succession. And that's kind of what some of the later books deal about. But, yes, to answer your question, that's why she does it. But it's an interesting that the Denis Villeneuve version, the newer ones, actually do have Zendaya playing the wee girlfriend, as you so accurately called the character Chani. They have her at the start, not speaking in the same way to the camera, but it's like speaking to Paul as he has dreams about her. Which,
that makes
as
so much more
as an emotional
sense.
through line, makes a lot more sense. And it's something I do quite like that they do with the newer ones, is kind of giving more weight to that relationship dynamic
The
than
whole
they do in
way-
this film.
The whole way through this film,
even
obviously,
the book, to
me
be honest.
not having seen or read or like know anything about the plot of Dune, everything was just you being like, okay, in a moment, do you know that really emotionally impactful scene from the movie where we like spend so much time and this person gives the performance of a lifetime? Yeah, this is about to come up, and then it would be like a 2-second moment of this guy dying, and he's like, ah. And that's it, and you're like, yep, and that's all the time we spend on that.
Yeah, it's very funny. As someone that does have a soft spot for this film in a sort of guilty pleasure way, and definitely likes the extended one kind of as a movie, it's hard to differentiate it, but also really likes the new ones. It is interesting to watch this and be like, that character's kind of done better in this one, but it's surrounded by all this, so it's not as good. That character's definitely done worse. It's interesting, but right, this isn't going to be me for the next 40, 50 minutes just going through the plot of Dune.
No.
I want, because
too complex.
as we've kind of established here, it's very complex, it's very bit by bit, but I want to go over like broad observations as we generally go through the plot. So, for what you said, the actual plot is warring houses coming to, there's a change of the guard on who runs the planet Arrakis, who mines the spice, who therefore controls space travel. There's a House Atreides, that's the good guys, and there are House Harkonnen, the bad guys. They've got an ancient blood feud that goes way back. They hate each other, but the emperors went, right, House Atreides, you're now going to go and take over Arrakis from House Harkonnen, and they're going to go away. And it's like, why would they do that? That's clearly going to cause an upset. The plan is, when they do this, the Emperor is actually jealous of how popular House Atreides is becoming. He wants to put them on Arrakis, have the Harkonnens destroy them with his help secretly, and that stops him, maintains political power for him within the galaxy, and solidifies spice trading, getting rid of enemies, etc. That's a very simplified version of it. But what ends up happening is, because Paul, the son, has been getting bred to this witchy breeding program, he's actually been developed to become Space Jesus, the Kwisatz Haderach. And because they've also been on Arrakis already, these witches, setting up beliefs with the people of Arrakis about a stranger who will come from the stars, Lisa Al Gaib, how they say it in the new film.
Lisa Al Gaib.
Lisa Al Gaib! Because that's been set up, when Paul comes over with all these witchy powers that he's got through genetic breeding and starts doing, I can do this, do that, they're like, oh my God, he's the Messiah. And then he's able to then, after the betrayal of his family and the death of his father, he is then able to rally the Fremen with his wee girlfriend. These are the people of Arrakis who already believe in him as a prophet, and he's able to control the sandworms, which are on Arrakis, producing the spice, defending the deserts, and they're able to take out and kill House Harkonnen, with the help of also his mother and his sister, who is 6 or 3, but has all the memories of like 1,000 generations before. And she's probably going to be my pick for the rogue, to be honest with you. And all that happens, and then he takes over the known universe by marrying into the royal house, keeping them aligned, but deposing the evil emperor and the house. I think that's a pretty succinct.
That was very succinct.
Yeah.
I'm quite impressed.
Thank you. Very
That's actually quite interesting.
right?
It is quite interesting. It's a good story. You should
a
watch
great
the.
story.
You should watch the
new-
sound films.
Yeah.
they're actually good.
Yeah, absolutely. But so given that, you can see how that could be fucked up.
So for people who've maybe not seen Dune or are as confused as Abby might be, if I would probably split the families up as so you've got the Emperor separate, and then you've got the Atreides. That's where Kel MacLachlan is, and then you've got the Harkonnen. That's where Sting is.
Yes, for anyone that wasn't aware, Sting from The Police, that's right?
The Police,
Yeah,
yep.
The Police, famously, plays a villain, plays a really weird villain, Fade Rotha, who is who was meant to marry Paul if she Kel MacLachlan if he was a girl, but now isn't. So it's almost like the two of them are competing to become Superman Jesus, which doesn't get explained too well in that film.
No.
Again, right?
So
Silly.
that's
Very
that's
silly.
what's happening.
It
But-
was all just vibes.
Play-
This film was just like a bag of vibes.
Well, that's one of
and
the
they
reasons I
weren't
really
all
like it. I like some of the vibes, and even the bad ones I still enjoy. But yeah, Sting plays him in this one, and Austin Butler plays him in the new one.
That's who Austin Butler
Yes.
That's Austin Butler's.
Sting is that person.
Yes,
Yeah,
Fade Rotha.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can see they went in a very different direction tonally with the Harkonnens in the new one.
Visually.
Yeah, visually.
What?
So the Harkonnens are supposed to be. I don't know if this is book plot or if this is just film plot, but the Harkonnens are supposed to be from a planet that
Giddy Prime.
that doesn't have kind of any light. So
Yeah.
but that's why you've seen pictures of Austin Butler in it. He's like
Looks like
bald
Voldemort.
So
and
I
like
think that's more from the film, but it's a great invention. There's a shorthand. I think they give some other explanation for it in the book. I can't really recall. Again, the flow of information. We don't really need
And
to know
then for
that
some
at that time.
reason, all the Harkonnens in this film look like they're from the west of Scotland.
Yeah, they've all got bright ginger hair. But like to be, that's a very funny way of putting it. I think that is book accurate. I think it's some form of interbreeding incesty thing. I'm not too sure. But the Harkonnens are meant to be horrific, like monstrous, grim people. Like they really toned them down even for the films. Like
They look like Lazy Town. What's
Yes.
his name? What's that?
I know what you mean.
The main one. What's his name in the blue?
Sporticus.
Yes. Yeah.
Totally.
They all look like Sporticus, but with like ginger spiky
It'd be
hair.
funny. It'd be quite funny to get a wee comparison of the two of them up on screen. That'd be funny.
I'll do that in the reels.
Lovely. But yeah, so that's the plot rundown. Obviously, quite in depth. We're not going to go through all of it. We don't really need to, but some key things that I want to point out. So, very first thing that's going to, for me, set up the weird tonal dissonance that you're going to get in this film. It comes up, you get that lovely opening. You're like, oh, Princess Erlin. Oh, she's pretty. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, we're learning about magic space drugs. Okay, interesting. And then we do the title, Dune. The Dunes are there, and the music's like ba 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 ba. And you're like, oh shit, okay, cool. And then Rogue Alert, first big rogue moment. I should point out as well, we like to talk on this podcast about things that are roguish, things that that means that they're out of place, and we always pick a rogue. It's the most out of place, insane character. But this
With an implied narrative.
an implied narrative, the best implied narrative. You know, they with one line they imply a universe of potential. That's what we love. And we immediately get that with this film, because the argument can be made that this film itself is the rogue.
I was going to say, I don't even think this film had any narrative, implied or otherwise. Like,
Oh no, it's all implied. The entire narrative is implied. But yeah, Rogue Alert right away, it comes up that the soundtrack is done by Toto of Africa fame.
Wow.
Inexplicable. So it's directed by David Lynch and music by Toto. That is immediately telling you that we are in for a bumpy fucking ride. What is happening?
I just want to, because you can do quite a good David Lynch impersonation.
It's reasonable.
Be David Lynch in the 80s,
Okay.
telling me about Toto after you've heard Africa for the first time.
You know, Abigail, they were just eye-opening, enchanting. You want to feel music, Abigail? You listen to Africa by Toto on repeat for a fortnight on your driving to work. Cup of coffee, cigarette, Africa blaring. You won't even know if you're crying or if it's just the sun in your eye, Abigail. That's kind of David Lynch. So thank you. The fact that he was like, yeah, shit, total need to do this, man. See this weird space plot line about, think about the plot I've just told you.
Yeah.
Think about the plot we've just gone down. And you're thinking, right, how are we going to get the mood for this? Who are we going to get for this? We're getting David Lynch. Oh, interesting. Edgy director, dark, surreal. Oh, dreams. The imagery could be there. Okay. And David, what do you want to do for music? Toto! What the fuck? Like that creative decision has
You
to
know
go.
what stung there? The police would have arguably thematically made more sense.
You're right. They could have done a Moody soundtrack. That'd have been cool. Love that. Instrumental police. Great. What's that like? We'll never know. But yeah, so I've tried to look into before, and I can't remember exactly why. But if I do, then I'll definitely make a little reel on why Toto was fucking
I also
part of this.
wouldn't be surprised if we looked into this and found out that Toto was just David Lynch.
Oh yeah, the actual secret is that David Lynch has been funding Toto this whole time.
But like, there's 4 guys in Toto, and David Lynch is all 4 of them.
Yeah.
Like, that
Inexplicably.
wouldn't surprise
And
me at all.
everyone just pretends, oh yeah, of course. It's like knowing that Richard Bachman is Stephen King. And you're like, no, it's not. You tell me Toto was David Lynch? That is not the same as Stephen King has a pen name sometimes. Not the same thing. But yeah, that just sets the clash of tones that we're about to witness. After that, we then get another little prologue, or second prologue, which just sets up the planets. You know, I actually quite like this one. It's just like planet Giri Prime, planet Arrakis, planet Caladan. That's where the House Atreides are from, the good guys, Kyle MacLachlan. Sets them all up, the Emperor's planet, and it's just, you know, it's big, cool space visuals, and it just kind of goes, spice is here, these guys are going here. Again, just giving us a little bit of context, because it's hard to do geography when you're knowing a planet. So just to show the planets is cool. And then we immediately get to Exposition the Musical, where we just start getting exposition fired at us left, right, and centre. Without, again, there's a reason the story is kind of told the way it's told, because they lead the exposition. No, we just jump straight into it. We jump straight into the grand plot happening, which I don't think is actually a scene, because we don't actually see it. We just hear about people talking about it. So I see why you want to do that, but it's ridiculous. We meet the Emperor, and immediately we're just getting words thrown at us like Bene Gesserit and this and that. Bit of a nightmare. What was your immediate impressions of seeing this first scene in the big gilded room, and they're all just chatting?
I have a single idea what you're talking about.
Beautiful. So what happens is guild. This is a bit I do like. The guild navigators come in. Guild navigators are the ones that use the spice to fold space, as they describe it, to space
That's
travel.
how they travel. Yeah.
And we see a beautiful David Lynch contribution to all of this. A big, horrible, grotesque practical effect, and a big tank with his wee breathing thing in his eyes, and he talks
It's
to
like
them.
a big hog in a tank of oil or something like
and
that.
The whole idea is that the spice, he's used it so much that it's mutated his body. And as soon as you see that, and if you know anything about Lynch, and be like, okay, yeah, we're in a Lynch film. I can see why he would want to do that. Because the space navigators aren't really in the new ones. Like, you see a glimpse of them and you hear about them, but they're not really used. They focus more on other stuff, which is fine. But I like that in this one, we get this big, amazing practical effect. So that's a really good practical effect. We're then followed by a scene where we meet Kyle MacLachlan, which, of course, has our very bad visual effects, which Abby immediately was like, yay, hokey bullshit. And I was like, yeah, hokey bullshit. Literally, I've got just quoted down from Abby, this is amazing. I was like, this is
He
amazing.
rose from death. You were just like, this film.
Yeah, it says something that the worst part of the film draws Abby in, which is good.
So in this scene, Kyle MacLachlan's character, Paul Atreides, he is
He's baby girl.
sure.
You said it. I'm just quoting what you said.
He is very baby girl.
He's being accompanied by his kind of
Mentors.
his sparring masters, and in this universe, they have shields that they can activate so that when they're scrapping, they don't actually hurt each other, so that they can do proper practice. But this practical, I can't even explain it. It's like
big blocky animation that
Yeah.
blurs
It
everyone's.
it looks like when you play The Sims and then your sim gets his wee willy out.
it does look like that.
So I was just picturing these like wee naked sim people having a wee scrap.
That's so funny. Yeah, it's real bad creative decision there.
Yeah.
And it just, if that was what it looked like, I'd just be like, you know what? Let's just have them fight with knives and
Yeah.
just pretend. Let's just pretend that that's not a thing. Do you know what I mean? Because of the way they do it in the newer films, it's like you see like a little hologram going over them, but then it kind of fades away. But when they get close, you see that it's almost like there's a friction as the blades try and get in, and it glows different colours. And it's subtle, but it communicates, red means almost a hit, blue means not a hit. Because the point is they're fighting with knives, and these shields will stop blades from getting in, but you gotta do it slowly and trick your opponent. All this stuff. Not communicated well in this film at all.
No,
It's just an
like,
actual
hey
mess.
guys, what's up? And then they all become naked Sims and just start battering each other. And you're like, why is this happening?
Inexplicably, Patrick Stewart's there as well.
Yeah, Patrick Stewart's in this. Forgot about that.
And he's the one who's fighting him in this scene. And he has the great line, it's time to fight, Paul. And he's like, I'm not in the mood for fight. And he goes, I'm not in the mood to fight. Moods for cattle and love making. What does that mean?
What does that mean?
What do we think that means?
What was that? I seriously said it was similar. You were talking about kisses on the cheek.
And
I was like,
on the cheek.
I hate a kiss on the cheek. And you're like, why do you hate a kiss on the cheek? And I was like, over familiar for a friend, not familiar enough for a lover.
Yeah, it's totally,
Shite.
totally fair.
But it's like a similar kind of. It was just an odd qualifying statement.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
like, what are we talking about?
Like mood as in like for cattle because it starts with moo. Is that what he's getting at?
That's okay. Is there a pun going on there?
Is that what that is?
That's maybe,
Like
or it could just be
mood.
like the fact that when cattle are
And
in
love
heat, stay
making.
away from them.
And love making it like
You got to be in the mood to have sex. Is it actually quite a good joke?
Is it?
There seems to be a couple of levels to it, but the fact they just get said and everyone just is like, and immediately turns into a fight scene with the worst CGI you've ever seen. You're getting hit by two things at once. You're like, what's this script? What's this visual? Where are we? What's happening? And Abby's just smiling the whole time, like, this is the best part. And I'm like, oh, well, we're going downhill. Again, we kind of established that they're going Kyle MacLachlan. Weirdly, first film role for Kyle MacLachlan.
Wild.
Wild that this was his
While
first.
he continued to get work after this.
Aye, I know.
He was, look, as we say, he's decent enough. He's very earnest.
Yeah.
Everything he does is earnest as hell, which is one reason that I want to watch this new Fallout TV show, because he's obviously in it, and I'm like, yep, I'm sold. He absolutely should be doing that. But yeah, he was huge in other Lynch films: Blue Velvet, Twin Peaks, The Return, of course, and
Desperate Housewives.
Desperate Housewives. He's done lots of different stuff. And it's just hilarious that his first role was essentially to be Luke Skywalker for sci-fi nerds, and it just wasn't that. It's just it's.
I thought you were like Luke Skywalker for
For
sci-fi
sci-fi
nerds,
nerds, yeah.
as if Luke Skywalker isn't Luke
Isn't-
Skywalker for sci-fi nerds.
but to the hardcore sci-fi nerds, Star Wars wouldn't be considered sci-fi. Is the point?
He is.
And because it's the OG.
He's supposed to be Sandy Luke Skywalker.
Yeah. Which is what Luke Skywalker is, because he's from a sand planet. Honestly, the connection between Star Wars and Dune are insane. But continuing with Dune, again, we didn't see an actual okay scene. Kyle's dream. He has a dream. Kyle MacLachlan, Paul, has a dream about Arrakis, and it's like, cool, Lynch is in this fucking element. We're getting cool visuals. We're getting this. We're getting that. You're like, wow, I wonder what this will all build up to. Hope you're prepared to keep wondering what those will build up to, because the film has no intention of actually building us up to them in a coherent way. It takes 40 minutes of a little bit back and forth, just chatting shit between different characters. Like we meet Paul's dad, Duke Leto. Great character. Oscar Isaac plays him in the new one. Really, really powerful character. The actor they used for him is a great actor. Forget his name right now, but he's a very famous German actor. He's in Das Boot, which is regarded by many as a brilliant piece of cinema. I don't think he knows English that well, though. And I'm pretty sure it's kind of similar to
Highlander,
our leading Highlander, who kind of learned English better so they could play this role. Because he's saying things like, my son, Paul, come. And you're like, whoa, this is very uncanny valley coming from the dad.
Tommy Wiseau.
Yes, Tommy Wiseau.
I do think it's a bit rich, though, taking the mick out of Dune for talking shite for 40 minutes in order to get to the point.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Famous for that. Often being quoted, taking 40 minutes to get to.
Don't mean you, I mean this whole what we're doing.
Very funny that we're saying this. Finally 40 minutes in, we get to Dune. And Claude, you were very happy at this point. You were like, get Dune.
Yeah.
That's all you kept saying, get Dune. Which is very, very funny. And in our almost hysterical state at that point, I'm like, this is rough. We finally get to Dune. And the sets look good, but you know, like in the newer version, it's like, oh, welcome to this dangerous place. We start getting whisperings of the messianic prophecy. You know, it's very atmospheric. It's all very dark. It's a very hot, like harsh place. And the structures are huge, spiraling, and everyone's moody. Secrets are abounding. What's going on? Oh, things don't work as well as they should. There might be assassins. Here it's like, oh, cool, we're on holiday. We're arrived. Oh, look at the set. Nice set. And yeah, comparing it, Claude, you've seen both. Mm-hmm. How would you compare that kind of difference of? I
mean, like in the films that have come out recently, like Paul arrives and there's immediate whispers of like, oh, is this the Messiah guy? And you're like, oh, that kind of sets up the fact that this planet already has the Messiah as a concept.
A very important plot point.
Yeah,
to be honest.
It's the film, innit? That's what it's about.
Kind of the point. That's why I was so happy with the new ones, because they really just emphasise.
But they just kind of show up in this one, and they're just kind of cutting about.
Yeah, bad CGI arrives them there. You don't believe they're actually on a planet.
No,
and they're just walking around. The sets are good. The sets are generally quite good for this film, apart from one very noble exception, which we'll talk about in a moment. But there's just not a lot of life to it. We kept saying this when we were watching it. We kept going, mere pace. And again, a part of that will be Lynch, but it's also because he has his own pace. He takes things slow. Again, he doesn't want to make a big, fast movie. He wants it to be like moving paintings and stuff like that. Cool.
Not for Dune.
Not for Dune, and also not if you're not letting him edit it. Because I'm actually like going, yeah, this is a really moody scene, but it flows like this, and this will happen. You know, I could maybe see Lynch with a final cut and enough coverage of the shots. He could actually maybe make that work. But if you're not letting Lynch edit it, then why would you let him shoot it in his long,
drawn out way?
Do you know what I mean? So maybe I'm giving too much credit to Lynch, but I like seeing the longer version, there is method there. He was clearly trying to do something, but fuck me, the editing just completely kills it dead. Because we're just sitting here like, oh, we're finally on the desert planet. You were so excited for about 3 minutes, and then it was just, oh, we're talking to another weird looking character with weird eyebrows that's talking about his calculations in his mind, and we're like, all right. Mere plot, wee boy. And we don't really get much more. It just kind of goes on this kind of trajectory. Things get set up. It's revealed that there's so for example, there's an assassination attempt on Paul very early.
Oh, poison dart,
yeah. And
that was dumb.
Yeah. Again, in the new film, it's a very tense scene. This little dart comes in, he can just hear it. And the only reason he doesn't get seen by is he's not moving and he's behind a hologram and it's moving towards him. It's so tense. And at the right moment, he has to grab it or it'll like stab him and possibly immediately kill him. And this movie is literally like a prop on a string of a syringe just coming towards him. I'm like, that's
it's like the flying keys in Harry Potter.
Yeah, but like slow.
It's like,
on a track.
Dumb.
There's nothing threatening about it, and as well. And again, in this film, they don't really explain that it is an assassination attempt. Not really.
Not really.
It's
very blown over. Like in the new one, that causes a lockdown. It's like, Paul, are you okay? Okay, we need to do all this. Find who did this, and they they find people that have buried themselves in the wall like for weeks so they can just do this one control to try and kill them. Like very like, oh shit, this is an actual thing, a threat, Jesus. And this one's like, oh Paul, oh be careful. Like,
It's an assassination attempt on
the heir apparent of your house.
Yeah.
And I was like, good old Paul. The tone is all over, the focus is off, and it's just a bit boring. I think that's the worst thing you can say about this film, as ridiculous as it is, and it does have these moments of big, pulpy, ridiculous things. There's just also a lot of moments where just like, mate, what are we doing here?
The thing is, like, obviously we've explained the plot already, and we've kind of covered the fact that what ends up happening is that the people of Arrakis do accept Paul as their messiah, as their Lisa Al-Gaib, right?
Lisa Al-Gaib.
And
Javier Bardem
what they could
delivered
do,
the best lines ever just doing that. Like, that will not leave my vocabulary for a while.
but what they could have done with this is kind of focused on that part, like, oh, these people, the Fremen, then they're like accepting this outsider as their messiah. That's an interesting concept.
Yep.
These are like very insular people whose whole point is that they're like, you know, don't let the outsiders in. They're like skilled assassins. They're like these really kind of weather-beaten desert people. They've got
Like,
like
they survive on their sweat, like it's reused in
they've
their
got
body.
like suits that they reuse all of their like sweat and stuff like that in order to hydrate themselves because the desert's so hot. They've got special ways of walking across the desert so that it doesn't like tempt the fucking giant worms out.
Yeah.
So they do sand walking and stuff like that. Can focus on all that shit like the new films do, but in this one, like all the interesting shit they just blow over, and then we've got like a 20-minute scene of Kyle MacLachlan like evading a fucking dart on a string.
I remember he has that scene where he's also practicing against that ridiculous robot with like a chainsaw coming out of it, like a spear. And he's just like,
It's
like,
like
what are we doing?
It's like a fucking, that whole bit. It's like obviously a robot that he's training against, but it's like a Saw spoof.
yeah.
It's like Scary
doesn't look
Movie if they
good.
did Saw. It's just fucking ridiculous.
But again, look at that in comparison to Star Wars. Remember when Luke has that little bit when he's using his lightsaber to deflect the laser bolts? Mm-hmm. Quite exciting scene. Very, very quick, and it has the same idea. Again, you can just see how Star Wars is how to do this sort of idea. The new films are how to do this idea. This film is unfortunately not how to do this because it's just boring and the focus is all off. Like Lady Jessica, Paul's mother in the new ones, is such a good character. Who plays her again?
I don't know.
Is it Rebecca?
Rebecca
something?
Ferguson.
Rebecca Ferguson, and she's so good, really, really good. And they change her a little bit from how she is in the book, but they do it so well. And this one, she looks like the same age as Paul, for starters. Like, they look about 5 years difference. And she's just giving it fucking nothing. She's just like, oh, Paul, I'm really worried about what we've done to you.
I got to kind of illustrate as well. So the reason why it's so significant that Paul's a boy, obviously, is because he's the Messiah. But in order to, like, that's what his mum has tried to create. But the problem with that is that you've got to kind of pass all these tests, like the box you were talking about, right?
Yep.
The whole
the
concept
Jar.
of the box is that there's never been a man who's been able to put his hand in the box and not die, because if you remove your hand from the box, it'll just kill you. And this has never happened before.
Yeah, and it's kind of based on almost older ways of science who decides that women can withstand pain more than men and all this stuff. But if a man was ever to get that power that the women have developed in themselves, that he can do that, then he will be space
But they
Jesus.
don't explain that
They
that's
don't
why
explain
it's...
that. You just get this weird scene like, oh, that's a pretty cool scene. What was the point in that? And like, they do it really well in the new one. Again, they just go, oh, a trapped animal will gnaw off its own hand. What will you do? The idea is don't be an animal, essentially, and that just kind of gives you something. But yeah, they're just hitting out all the main highlights of the cool story, and there's always something off. There's
The
always
whole point of it is just like, we're going to create a man who has the strength of like a witch, who's got all the knowledge of the past like thousands of generations,
and also can now see the future,
and now can see the future as well. And no man has ever done this before, and they don't explain that that's the point. Kyle MacLachlan's just a wee boy cutting about a desert. For what reason?
Yeah,
Like in this version.
yeah, absolutely. And he's barely in the dunes. I think they do it all in like a 5-minute like montage,
He's barely in the dunes.
like in the actual desert itself. I mean, I
Right.
didn't even realise he was in the desert, did you?
I thought the planet was called Dune.
Yeah, but dunes are a feature of a desert.
That's why it gets called Dune, because the actual planet's called Arrakis, but it gets called Dune because it's got loads of sand dunes.
Oh, so it's like a nickname.
Kind of, but it's
So
not.
Dune and Arrakis are the same place.
Yes.
Yes.
Hilarious. Don't know that.
Great. See, again, this is me and you as fans of it struggling to try and work this out, and Abby's not said much, sitting there like, "Yep, it didn't work. I don't know anything." And I think honestly,
I do genuinely. There's just something about, because I was the same with Lord of the Rings. I was the same with. I tend to avoid films like Star Wars, but like just things that are that kind of like spanning many places, going on an epic journey.
here's the lore.
Like wars, and there's lore, and there's these people and this like tribe people and this kind of creature, and it's just I want to enjoy it. The subject matter, I like sci-fi stuff, like certain, like I like X-Files, but like
Yeah.
I there's so much in this like really want to enjoy, but I can't follow it. I've got no frame of reference for it. Like I really struggle. But this is like I know as little about this film as I do about football.
That's a very funny comparison. That's very funny.
The reason I bring it up is because I've had to do a thing about football at my work recently, and I'm good at my job, and I like to do the research and things. But see, if you don't understand anything about a subject, nothing makes sense.
Yeah.
Because you have no frame
Yes.
of reference for what information is important. So if they're like, "Oh, this is the first like footballer to do this," I'm like, "Is that how many people have done that? Is that cool? What is that? I don't get it."
And what is that? Yeah.
So
what
I
does that
had to
mean?
messaging people at my work, being like, "What is the difference between a penalty and a penalty kick?"
Yeah, and that is
It's
exactly.
like there's not one, but that is like how I felt watching this
That's
film.
how it felt watching the film with you, because you just turned to it and go, "So his grandmother is a bad guy." And you're like, "Who's his grandmother, Abigail?"
I feel as if I come across so stupid on this podcast. I'm actually an intelligent person. I just cannot understand this film or films of this nature. I don't know what it is, but I do not have the ability to process this kind of story.
Without much help.
But also,
But it's not told well. This is the thing.
but it kind of wouldn't matter even if
Yes,
it was.
yes.
Is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, because that's the thing. We watched Lord of the Rings, and even though you're not the biggest Lord of the Rings fan, you were like, okay, you'd ask me and go, "Oh, clarify that," and I would. But generally, those films do lead you on a. They do explain themselves, but this.
But
this
I could
doesn't.
not have understood that film without you explaining it to me.
Fair, but I've explained Dune to you and you still don't understand that. Whereas I explained Lord of the Rings and you understood it because you had the context of an actual well-told story there. Do you get what I mean?
I get bits of it. Like, so there's like bits of this I understand. No. False.
Like,
There's bits of Lord of the Rings I understand. Like, I can, so the Schmeagol stuff.
we're not asking you to do a whole...
But what I mean is like that one through line.
yeah, all the Smeagol
Obviously
got.
something about that interests me, so I
Yeah.
can actually follow it. But like, in the context of the entire thing, no.
Yeah, but...
I'm trying to think if there is a bit of this that I liked other than the fighting, the CGI. And
Did you enjoy
There wasn't
Kyle?
a bit that I enjoyed, and I actually liked this series.
So, well, we'll come to a scene that I enjoyed, but again, it still has that glaring issue of a big fucking issue just being there. So we get to go meet House Harkonnen. We get to meet the enemies, the bad guys, ostensibly, before they take over Dune. And we meet Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, a huge guy, covered in rings, painted toenails, covered in warts, ginger hair, mental, floats about, and like implied that he's got an interest in young boys. Everyone's installed with a heart plug, so he unplugs their heart and kills them, and all this stuff. It's all quite gnarly. We meet what's his name? His nephews, Phaedrotha, played by Sting, and the Beast Raban, played by, can't remember his name, but he's just got the weirdest little smile, like he's got a like a little secret the whole time. And they're all just so sweaty. You're like,
And that's the guy who's getting his spots popped all the time.
Yes.
yeah, so that's
Right.
the Baron. That's the Baron. Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, they're we're meeting all these grotesque characters. It's a very grotesque, dark scene. Like these Harkonnens are squashing bugs to drink them, and then just throwing the bit of metal away, and it's all very wasteful, all very and it's great. The main issue though is that this was obviously before green screens. This was back when it was probably more like blue screens or something like that, because it goes blue, green, then blue again in terms of development of that technology. So all the walls are green, and you're just looking at it like, that's green screen. Your brain immediately goes, that's green screen. So it's something that's not aged well at all with that. And again, Sting inexplicably is
And
there.
it looks like Rocky Horror.
Yeah.
It does.
It looks so much like
This
Rocky
film is
Horror.
very much like Rocky Horror does Dune, which is a fun way of looking at it, and some people do like it for that reason. But the costumes are great. I think the costuming's pretty good. I think the sets are overall pretty good. We just need a pace. We just need more of a pace, which is why it's a hard film to talk about in that sense. But after that, obviously, we then have the main plot point would be House Atreides gets betrayed by House Harkonnen. The Emperor's troops come. Paul gets exiled to the desert. His father dies. There's been a traitor in their midst. Again, the traitor plotline is a great plot that they really build up in the book. Like, who's the traitor? All this. And this one, it gets barely mentioned. Like, oh, there's a traitor, and the dad's like, sure. And you're like, okay. And
Who was the traitor?
The traitor is the Doctor, Dr. Yui. Again, yeah, Dr. Yui, his wife got kidnapped by the Harkonnens. He's meant to have imperial conditioning, which means he can never actually turn against his owners, but they managed to break him through his wife, and it's all this. And basically, he betrays House Atreides. But he hates the Harkonnens, who have taken his wife so much that he basically goes, right, you're gonna get killed by my Duke, you're gonna get killed by the Baron. But you're going to be killed in person. I'm going to give you this poison tooth that you can bite on, and you can kill them, take them all out at the same time.
He kills everybody with his bogged breath.
Yeah, which in the new films is a very dramatic moment. Like, he's paralysed in place, and the Baron floats towards him, and it's all very, he wants to whisper a last thing, and the Baron's like, what is this? It's all, and it does happen. Dramatic music, oh my God.
And this one, he just fumbles it.
Yeah, this one he absolutely fucks it.
Yeah.
And it's
It
got,
just blows the stink breath at the wrong guy.
he's
just like,
the tooth. And he's saying things like when the revelation happens, it's meant to be like, oh my God, you're the traitor. But he delivers it like, Yui. And you're like, Jesus, his name's Yui. No, Yui. And you're like, you're not even that old. It's bad, boring. And then I remember you're like, and then the Baron's like, I survived. You're like, oh, was that it? Was that the assassination attempt? I was like, yeah, that's the big cool assassination attempt that happens. Terrible. And again, the Baron decides to float off, which is very funny when he floats away. But yeah, just like the threat just doesn't seem to be there.
No. The guy doesn't really explain as well either. What they could be as literal as saying, here's this tooth, blow it into the Baron's face and then he won't be able to kill your son. And then you'd be like, oh, this is why this is in place. Do they explain that? Do they fuck?
Yeah, or not well. And it's, again, things that they do explain, it's very much bogged down by about.
I understand
3
that
minutes
this
of
film is
boring pacing.
super, loads of vibes and, it's interesting to have people speaking riddles and stuff like that. But you need to... You need to earn that understanding in your audience. You need, you can't just be very kind of, what does this mean?
You need to reward the audience.
Yes.
It can't always be, what does this mean? Because then at the end of it, you're like, there's nothing. Because it's all vibes. Like, when I think of this film, I think of...
And that's fine for things like Twin Peaks, because the vibes are like, oh, cool, autumn, and little town and murder and stuff like that.
But there's good writing there.
And the vibes here are just loads of stinky guys. Sweaty, stinky guys.
Everyone's
So I don't want to get into the
Everyone's
vibe.
got
Why would I
weird
want to get
haircuts.
into the stinky guy vibe?
Yeah, it's like ugly Star Wars. And you're
Yeah.
like, Star Wars wasn't even that.
Bogging Star Wars.
And when you're saying that, and Star Wars main character is a big walking hairy guy called Chewbacca, and you're saying that that's sexy compared to this, that tells you a
You
lot.
get
about,
everyone Claude being like, "Oh, this film's bogging," and you're like, "You think Chewbacca's sexy?"
Didn't say that. I said Chewbacca's not. I'm saying the fact that we're calling Star Wars sexy
No, I heard it.
compared to
You are calling
You
Star
call-
Wars sexy.
okay, fair, I am, but it is compared to how bogging this movie is.
Could have used Harrison Ford as your sexy example rather
Yeah,
than
but that's what I meant.
Chewbacca.
That is more what I meant. The point I was making is it's funny that something that people will think, oh, Star Wars isn't known for being a sexy film, compared to Dune, there's no competition. One good scene, though, that we do get, and where Lynch is really in full display, is when we meet the sandworm for the first time.
That's pretty cool.
That sequence is amazing because it's a practical effect. It's like they've got to basically the Duke's got to rescue a spice harvesting team, and we're like, oh shit, action's going to happen. But no, they just lazily drift towards the actual machine, and then David Lynch has his cameo appearance as the operator, and then the Duke's like, we're gonna get them onto the ship, slowly come down. They get the guys, no drama, and you're like, oh my god, this was the big set piece. But then the worm comes out. And you're like, oh, and it looks amazing. Like big 3-pronged mouth thing, beak almost, just crushing the entire the spice
Factory.
digger
Yeah.
factory thing and just drags it down. Great. In the new one, it's also amazing. But how tense is that fucking scene?
Yeah, you don't know who's going to survive out of
Yeah,
it.
because Paul goes onto
There's
the
a
ground,
threat.
and when he gets there, he smells the spice. And because he's designed by the witches through breeding to respond well to this,
Never mind.
What? No. What?
The witches breed him to smell space.
the witches breed him to be the space Jesus, and space Jesus can be space Jesus through the spice,
Yeah.
which allows expanded
But
consciousness.
everyone has the space.
Yes, but the point is he's bred in a way that when it hits him, he'll be able to fully become space god and see the
Just
past,
for
present, and
context,
future.
in the new film, the second Dune film, they have baby worms, right? Like tiny. So obviously the ones we see are massive. They've got little worms, right? And from these little worms, you can extract this blue juice that's called the water of life.
Yeah, the
water of life, right? And what happens is that in the Dune films is that Paul drinks this and survives. Usually it would kill a person, and then he wakes up and he's got all these mad psychic powers and he can see the future and stuff like that. But that wouldn't usually happen to a man.
It would kill them.
It would kill them
Why doesn't it?
What?
Why doesn't it?
because he's space Jesus. Because they bred him to be space
Is he
Jesus.
actually space
Yeah,
Jesus?
because it's not. There's not a real.
Is there a real space Jesus?
No, not really.
It's all designed
So then why doesn't it kill him?
because he's been designed through actual biology to be a superhuman. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
Well, but then that's kind of what Jesus is.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's why people believe and call him Lisa Nagaib, because they've been made to believe that is a real thing.
The prophecies have been created. It's like real
She
religion.
looks like you actually want to flee. She's in fight or flight. She's in fight or flight right now.
It's kind of like real religion. Like, you know, sorry if you are religious, but it's all a load of shit. And like, you know, people have obviously made this shit up and been like, it's that guy, right? He's Jesus, right?
It's a commentary
But
on how
he's
it's a
the
commentary on
Messiah.
how religions
And, like,
can be made. Like
So
it's a
if-
clear philosophy
Yes,
going on here.
exactly.
Thematic thing going on.
If they've bred him to be the Messiah,
Uh-huh.
why did they not just breed all of themselves to be the Messiah?
Because they can't do it because they're women. And because they're
Yeah.
Is that the point of
Yes.
this?
Yes.
There- there-
Look.
there
Because
is-
men have power, because men are in charge. You can't have like a female messiah. Nobody would give
I
a
had
fuck.
this all wrong. I thought this was so feminist. I was like,
There's-
oh,
It is
there's the
feminist.
elements. There's different elements, right? It depends on your actual
But the
full
point
reading of
is-
it.
If you think of it as like, obviously you've got the main guy in charge, right? But really he's not in charge. It's all the intelligent women who've made this happen who are really important. But like you have to have this like figurehead who's like you're kind of he's the face of it. But really you've got all of these like
Other people working it behind the
Yeah.
scenes
who are
So
all
why
women.
can he do stuff that the women can't do?
because he's been designed that way.
But why did they design themselves that way?
So because they can't design themselves that way, because they're in this world. There's they fundamentally believe that there's a biological difference between the male sex and the female sex. There are differences, but they really go with it. Like the female can endure more pain throughout most of their life, but they can't go through this final pain. It's too much. A man has to get brought to that because men can't go through the normal pain, but if they were able to breed one through all their teachings and get him there, then they can essentially make a superhuman being. They don't have full control over how it happens. It's just different experimentations with
They're just
witchy
flying by the
magic.
seat of their pants. They're like, let's see what happens.
Look at
There's an
look
element
at
of that.
history, right? And look at how in history there have been times where you wanted a king. You didn't want a queen. People wouldn't have accepted a queen to be in charge of the entire country. Nobody
The
would.
entire universe.
They wouldn't. They'd been like, a woman can't run the country. A woman can't be in charge of like spice production. You know, like the most important thing in the universe. It has to be a man. So they've had to like make this Messiah man. So that and it's all about them gaining power at the end of the day.
Yes, they gain power to the man. He looks like this messianic figurehead that everyone goes, "That's Jesus."
They did all the work.
Well, that's the
Yeah,
point,
but
but
that's
they do
the
it. So
point.
this is
It's
why,
like
and this is
politics.
why there's a schism. Look, Abby, we're almost there. We're almost there. This is why there's a schism between the Reverend Mother, the grandma, and Paul's mother, because they were meant to wait one more generation, breed her with sting. Their son would become this all-powerful god, but because these houses were now married and the emperor was happy with them, the witches would have full control over this super being that could take over the galaxy with their whims. But because they do it one step earlier, and there's this tension between House Harkonnen and Atreides, which then blows up, there's now sides, and they don't have control of this one because they've sided with the bad guys. So that's why they have to kill Paul, and why when he comes up as the superhero, super being, they're like, fuck.
And to make
But
it
they
all
get what they want because the superhero's there.
Yeah, but he hates them because they've killed his family.
Why did they do that?
Because they didn't
They're
breed
warring
them.
families.
Because his mother didn't breed them
It's all a
right.
circle.
Yes.
Also, just to make it even more complicated,
Genuinely started having chest pains.
to make it more complicated as well, the actual story, the actual book, the actual kind of new films, Paul, like at the end of this film, they're just like, you're right, he was the Messiah. This was the right way to go. Woohoo! He's the good guy.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
But in the films and the books, that's not the case. They like Paul basically becomes too all powerful. He like kind of abandons his morals and stuff like that, and then it kind of comes to the conclusion that he's not the Messiah.
Yeah. So
It's Paul
basically,
Timothy Chalamet.
yes.
That's so funny.
He does it really well.
I know, but it's Timothy Chalamet.
It's so funny. Yeah.
Kind of a desert.
But basically,
It's just being like,
the
I'm
whole, the,
God.
whole, the, whole, the whole revelation at the end is
Hello. Hi guys. I'm God.
that is me, little old me. Yeah, so like the whole thing is he realizes humanity's doomed either way, but his way of doing it, when he takes charge, it will cause a holy war in his name, a jihad. That's how they're referring to this, because there are links to the actual Islam faith with the people of Dune and Arrakis.
Yeah.
But they, what's the word for it? This holy war will cause the deaths of 6 billion people across the galaxy in his name. But that is still better than where it would go in the other directions. So he goes, well, okay,
I think it's
time for the holy war.
I think it's important to note as well, maybe we haven't kind of made this part clear, not that any of this is going to make this any clearer to you, but like
This is so funny, this podcast become explaining Dune to
Abby.
via the David Lynch version.
So
I mean, here's
What-
the book, man. It's all fucking here.
what has kind of happened here, which we haven't really explained yet, is that so the witches, right, who are bold in this, by the way, just forgot to mention that. The
Which also confuses it.
So confusing because they all look like this.
the witches can choose what gender they want their child to be before it's born,
You
right?
can influence it.
So that is why they always end up having daughters, right?
Yeah.
But this witch has had a son, which she has chosen to do that. The reason why she's chosen to do that is because she's been married to the Duke, who is the guy
Not
who's
married, concubine, but yes.
Yes,
Yeah, with the Duke.
She's had a baby with the Duke, and she's like, I want to give him a son. I want to give him an heir. So she's had a boy, right? And then
Then she has another one.
Yeah, she has a daughter.
she has
later
a
on.
daughter later on, but she has a son first, and she's now it's kind of her. She's kind of jumped the gun a bit and been like, I am I'm powerful enough to produce the Messiah. And the rest of the witches are kind of like, no, you're not.
No, you're not.
No, you're not.
It's also it's not time.
That wasn't the plan.
We need to heal the political thing first.
And she's been like, nah, it'll be me. It'll be my son. That's kind of what's happened here.
And she's like,
so
also,
she's made a choice to have a son. It's not like that's just randomly happened.
Right.
So she has made the Messiah come a step too early and caused a war because of the tension between the Harkonnens and the Atreides. And it wouldn't have happened if they had just waited another generation, because those families would have married.
But again, love. It's the tragedy of it, because she does it out of love, and that's ultimately what ends up killing the Duke and stuff. So there's a genuine...
Love is the death of duty.
Yes, to quote Game of Thrones. It's absolutely true. But again, there's a beautiful little... That plot is there. Not in the film.
That's why I thought that the Reverend Mother was the gran, because
She was raging about it.
yeah, because I just didn't know why this
because it
woman would
doesn't
be squaring up to this woman about her having a son if she wasn't like her mother.
Yeah.
This film is very much, if you don't catch that one bit of dialogue and ponder on it correctly for 4 minutes, then you're going to lose the whole plot 20
Entire
minutes
plot.
in.
Yeah.
And that's basically what this film is.
Can we talk about the wee demon baby?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I want to talk about that, because so basically after Paul goes into the desert, his father's killed, he flees into the desert, he ends up meeting up with the Fremen, ends up getting involved in their community. It's all done very, very quickly. The new film spent like a good hour or so really building all this up, and it's great. 15 minutes less than that in this one. He drinks the water, he becomes all powerful, teaches them how to use weaponry, learns how to ride a sandworm, because that's a thing that they can do, and then they decide to ride in to battle against the Harkonnens, to Total playing a guitar riff as they're on this fucking huge worm. And again, another character from Twin Peaks shows up, Big Ed Hurley from Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
And again, Paul gets another couple of names thrown on, Muad'Dib and Usul. And he's like, oh, Usul's hooked a big one. And you're like, that's a weird line of dialogue and a weird delivery of it. Okay. But did you know that 3 years had passed in that time? 2 or 3 years had passed? Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And that's why...
Would have been nice to know
that, right?
Because then it would make sense as to why these like Fremen, the Sand people, have to come to accept Paul as their
To be fair, they do say
Messiah.
3 years has passed. Princess Ireland does cut in to say that. But don't say it.
It's a
Just
bit of
show
a
it.
it's a bit of a by the way as well, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's very by the way.
3 years past.
We meet Sean Young playing Chani. Sean Young from Blade Runner, famously not cast as Catwoman in the Tim Burton Batman one. She lobbied for it. She stalked the producers. She was kind of seen as a bit much. So she got her role cut the fuck down in this film as well as a result.
Often been quoted a bit much.
Yeah. But he's now in charge of that. And in that 3 year period, that is when Reverend Mother, now known as Reverend Mother, his mum, not the grandmother, she's now known as the Reverend Mother of them.
His mum drinks the juice.
Yes, she drinks the juice. Well done.
Yes. Yep.
And then she has a child. Because she's drank the juice, this child has all the memories of all the other Reverend Mothers. So this little demon baby with blue eyes,
Renesmee.
Renesmee is this, played by, I forget the actress's name, but she's also Donna Hayward's sister in Twin Peaks in a couple of scenes, and she's also in The Return in a very dramatic role, and is also in a very fun episode of The Sopranos, where someone that one of our characters has an affair with. And she's like an executive. So she's done loads of stuff. This is her first film role, playing creepy little Alia Atreides. So as they're all riding in on big sandworms, Paul has a great idea to see my spooky as shit little sister that knows everything. I'm going to send her first to really fuck with him. So they're all like, oh, Paul's coming. Or the Emperor's here like, nah, we'll stop him. All this stuff. And then this little girl just comes in as like a emissary from Paul. And then this spooky as fuck little girl in her little robe is like, my brother is coming, Baron, with many Fremen warriors. And you're like, oh, that's a rogue. That's a fucking roguey statement. Like, the concept of a 3-year-old girl having thousands of years worth of knowledge in her brain
It's terrifying.
and just smiling, and you know that what is she thinking of? What has she thought? It's like,
See, this is one of the things that I genuinely appreciated about the film. I was like, that's quite cool, because in the new films, it's just Anya Taylor-Joy. She shows up for a wee like flashback, and she's just there,
she's
like
not
looking
born
kind
yet.
of ethereal.
They do it more quicker. They don't do the 2-year thing. They just do like a little. They basically make her a character that the mother speaks to while in the womb, and instead of her talking to the mum as a little girl, they just have it done through that, and it works. And I'm excited to see her because she's pretty cool in the next one. The
I would
later
have
ones.
rather have been a wee Renesmee again.
But do you know what she's called? She's called Alia of the Knife because she's known for killing cunts with her knife.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so because that's how she kills the Baron. Because the Baron gets killed by Paul in the new films, which makes sense for those films. But in this one, after she's like, "Oh, my brother's coming," and the Emperor's like, "Right, battle stations," and everyone runs off. The Emperor inexplicably starts firing the guns himself. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
This old guy, this old Emperor.
He's not got soldiers. He is in charge of the universe.
Or the galaxy, what the fuck? And he's just firing the fucking turrets against
He's
these
not got
sandworms.
soldiers to do it for him.
And like, again, the sandworms look really good coming in, but then the CGI's, the effects aren't there because they don't do anything. We just see these, we keep seeing the same shot of like a sandworm coming in, cutting back to the Emperor, who looks so fucking bored by this point. Just like, he sighed. He started sighing. He like
Rolling his eyes.
Like actually, just this is
Apparently, the galaxy was on strike that
boring.
day.
Yeah, right. I'll do it. But as this happens, the Baron is left with Alia, who is then revealed is actually. It's actually revealed that the Harkonnens are actually their grandfather as well.
Too much.
Whatever, right?
Too
and
much.
then she's like, "Come closer, uncle," or whatever she says, or grandfather. And then he does, and then she just pulls out her wee blade and cuts his wee breathing tube stuff or his stuff, and he just goes, "Ah!" Starts floating away in a very bad case of CGI, and then floats out
Do you know what we haven't even talked about? That's like
and gets
quite
eaten by a sandworm.
it's quite a roguish concept in this, is that so the like Paul and the witches have the power to speak to people and then command them to do things, right?
Yes.
Which is quite an interesting concept, especially new when it's called the voice, you know. But instead of
The
doing
weirding way.
so it's literally just
That's what he teaches them.
Yes.
yes,
That doesn't make your eyes glow.
no,
No.
I
that's
thought
the spice
using the
that does
voice
that.
made your eyes glow.
no.
the spice.
So like the like in the Force and Star Wars and stuff like that, you know, you've heard these are not the drones you're looking for, that kind of thing. It's sort of that kind of concept.
Like you
where-
can make them forget what they've just seen.
yeah.
Ah, okay.
Right, but instead in this film they do it with guns. So you use like speaking a gun and then it blasts things and makes
Blasting.
things
It's like
explode.
that's not even in the lore. Like what are we
No.
doing? Yes,
just
they
decided to do that.
Yeah, it's a very stupid change. I kind of block it out because I'm like, that's so fucking dumb. Like what we did. But yeah. So Ali of the Knife. Okay, I'll give her a real title to a real one. She's fucking cut up the Baron. She's brought some life into this movie. It's hilarious that the only actor really giving you a perfect performance in that is the 3-year-old girl that you got in. You're like, that should be the worst part. But no, she's probably the best. Because she's like, doesn't fuck about, does something important, has a creepy vibe. Many Fremen warriors. Very creepy vibes. And done in like 2 minutes. Whereas you got Patrick Stewart fucking running about with a pug for some reason. Oh yeah, they have a battle pug that they bring into battle.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of pugs in this movie, which again is
So
maybe like a
much
little
going
nod
on.
to genetic breeding, and you know, pugs are very
So much going on in this movie and yet
and also not
nothing
enough.
going on.
Yeah. This is the issue. But yeah, and it all just kind of wraps up with Paul basically taking over Arakeen, the city. The Baron's dead. The Emperor's now held hostage by Paul. And then Paul basically is like, yep, we're taking over. What I'm going to do is I'm going to marry your princess, your daughter, the princess. That'll seal the breach. House O'Connell are gone. I'm Paul Atreides, and now I'm the Emperor. And the Emperor's like, I don't know about that. Turns to Sting, who's like, I will kill him. And then Sting decides to come over and have a wee sword fight with him, a wee duel, which is
And at
very.
this point I was like,
Who are you?
who's Sting? I
Yeah.
thought he was like a helper.
Right? So
Like I thought
again,
he was the
He's
spotty guys.
He's the heir to the Harkonnens. The
Yeah.
other.
I
he's-
assumed he was
he's
a-
the evil Paul.
So at this point in the film, which is right before I said to you, wait, that's not his gran, and I got a lot of it explained to me. I thought up until this point that he was like a henchman of the Baron. I thought he was just like a wee like butler.
He's the heir apparent.
I had no idea that he was like of any significance to this plot whatsoever. So I was like,
Quite important.
Very important.
I kind of thought that like it was like a wee like mini battle. It's like you're gonna have to go through me to get to him, and
No, it's the
And that's
battle.
kinda how they
like
portray
that's it.
Yeah, that's it. And again, the only other
dumb.
all we had is his introduction scene. So this is right for comparison. Fade in the new ones. Austin Butler. We don't see him for the whole first film, and then he comes up in the second one, but maybe 40 minutes into it, and he nails every scene he's in. They really build him up as a threat. They really delve into the he should have married Paul, but now they're rivals for who will become the next grand thing. All this stuff. They really build on this. They add in layers. He's very effective when he takes over. He's better than his brother. It's great. And it builds up to this fight scene. And we've already seen him fight and kill loads of other people. And it's like, okay, shit. And it's a very well choreographed fight scene. And Austin Butler brings a good bit of humour and a good bit of like genuine personality to it. Like he repeats a phrase that he says to a guy that he kills earlier when he gets defeated. It's really, really good. And it's, again, powerful and like well shot and fierce. The scenes that we have, he also has cannibal girlfriends and he's fucked up and he's on a planet with no sun that makes everything black and white and it's all edgy and he's got his Ann Austin accent going on. It's great. This film, for comparison, all we've seen is Fade show up with the Baron. As you said, he looks like a fucking helper.
Yeah, we help her.
We sweaty helper.
Like a wee assistant.
Next time we see him is in like a dream that Paul has, which again is meant to be a big thing, but it's just like he's in a dream going, ha ha ha. Yeah, okay, cool. And then the next thing we see him is he walks out in a pair of winged Speedos,
Yep.
and the Baron's like, lovely Fade, beautiful Fade. And he's just like, got this really terrible grin. And then we see him at the final scene.
That's like it.
That's not how you do a villain.
That's
then-
not how you build up the heir to the villain
Yeah.
family.
And like, especially when you know that he's meant to be who Paul was married to and he's kind of now in competition. That's a really fucking good plot thing for a villain. Especially not a main villain. Do you know what I mean? Especially like the idea that everyone else is done. Oh, the main guy's dead. Oh, the Emperor's... But shit, Fade's still here. And he's like, let's fucking do this. It falls
and then
so
they have
flat.
a very kind of honourable hand-to-hand fight, no shields,
With blades.
no big battles, no support. It's just our two potential heirs. But
Trial by combat.
but at this point you're like, who's this guy? Is he a rent boy? What's happening?
Yeah, what's going on
It
here?
was very confusing. I thought he was just there for the Emperor's pleasure.
Rent boy. You thought he was the Emperor's rent boy?
Do you mean the Baron? The spotty guy?
Who cares? Yes.
Yes. But yeah, well, and actually in the books he is. It's very heavily implied that the Baron molests his nephews in it as well.
That's a sin.
Grim.
Because Fade's 15 in the book as well.
Oofed.
So is Paul. They're both 15.
So
What's it with these books? Like this in Game of Thrones making everyone so fucking young. Like I get it, but also stop it.
So Paul wins.
So Paul wins, and then Paul wins, takes over, blah blah blah. And if you're a big fan of Dune, why are you laughing, Abby?
I've already said this in the podcast, but I forgot about this. It's just because I was thinking about Paul being 15 and him being Jesus, and that's obviously very young to be Jesus. I literally said earlier on this podcast that I was like, oh, I'm intelligent. I told you before that for years I couldn't work out how Jesus did so much and aged so quickly because he was born on Christmas but he died on Easter, and I thought it went like the same year.
Abby, man.
But that doesn't make sense because it would be going on to a different year anyway. Because if he's born in December and then it goes into the
No,
new...
no. I mean, like, I thought, like,
That was
it
4
was like
months.
he was alive for like 4
4
months.
Like,
And I
fucking
just
hell.
assumed that he, like, super aged. But it's when I was, like, when you go to school and they had an assembly and they would tell you about, like, the loaves and the fishes and stuff like that. I was like, man, he got a lot done.
Well,
That is
Aye.
shocking.
so speaking of...
Like, I know nothing about religion. I'm very, like, I'm not up to speed.
It's nothing to do with religion. It's how age works. Like,
yeah.
you get older and then the same dates happen every year still.
I can't believe you're like, I'm really lacking here. He did that in his first 4 months.
But, like,
I can't
it's
even
supposed to
I can't
be-
mind my first 4 months.
But I love as well because obviously what happens is he dies and then he comes back to life and Mary's like, oh my God, I can't believe this. My son's alive. Yay. But like, this wouldn't be surprising if he'd aged from birth to adulthood in 4 months.
Oh, you'd be like, oh,
surely
you know.
you'd be like, oh yeah, my magic son's come back to life.
Oh, yeah.
That makes sense.
That is the Son of God. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
That's the Son of God. Yeah, for sure, no doubt. Absolutely. You actually made it better. But anyway, we're not going to go into talking about the Bible because
Oh, we can't. We've spent
because
a
I
lot
could,
of.
and I don't want to. But this film ends with Space Jesus doing his final act as now you ruler of the universe, which is painted in a very good light in this film. And the new one's just like, oh, dark decisions, heavy going. Here we go, holy war's coming. And this one is very much like, yay, Cal MacLachlan's in charge. And then if you know anything about the Dune books and how the spice is made and how all this works, what he does next is absolutely fucking ridiculous. What he does at the end of the David Lynch movie, he just clicks his fingers and he brings rain to Arrakis
Yep.
for the first time in like thousands of years.
Just feels
Which,
a bit.
you know, if you
Like-
need the desert to make the sandworms, that make the spice, that make travel, and make you the super being, why the fuck would you flood the place?
Wet space.
Wet
Just
spice.
wet space.
This film is wet spice.
This is the worst space girl.
Wet space.
Wet
Oh,
space.
she's always late. She doesn't want to sing that song. I'm not doing back
She's
and forth. She's soaking, but she's
Wet
also just very
spice.
wet personality-wise. She's like, oh, I don't like this one. Everyone else is
wanna
really
do this.
buzzing about it. She goes in the interview and she's like,
I
no,
was wet space when you wanted to sit on that rocky beach.
you are wet spice. Often being
I have
quoted.
often been quoted being wet space.
Oh, I might need to be your new nickname, Wet Spice. Wee
Yeah.
mummy slash
So
Wet
it's like
Spice.
the whole thing is about we need to get control of the spice so that we can control the universe.
It's
And now
fucking-
I'm gonna piss on it.
It's fucking
The end.
Piss at the end, and then total plays. And you're like, what are we doing? What have we done?
So the film, that's it. It's
And
done.
bless
That is the end of the
rains
film.
down in
Did-
Arrakis.
Bless the
Yay!
rains down in Arrakis.
So, after this journey, which didn't make any sense, and I only know so well because I've had to learn the plot, we basically just end with total playing and
At this
all,
point, I
all
felt
our,
like I'd won something.
yeah, all our dreams of the Dune universe coming to screens right after the back of Star Wars tanks completely, and it takes another 40 years before they even make a new one. 30 years.
And David Lynch, well,
Yeah,
you've told me
40.
David Lynch
40.
described it as,
40 years.
Almost 40.
he said Dune was one of the greatest heartbreaks of his life.
Yeah, he regards it as that because he was like, it was the one time I didn't get full control over my picture at any
Surely
stage
he
of it.
knows that it was bad already.
I think there was elements of that, but again, I think he kind of makes the point that he lost control very early on,
Yeah, okay, fair.
and he didn't have control, and he didn't get the final edit, and he's disowned it. He's talked about recently how he'd maybe love to have another. There was some stuff that maybe someone got in an
Yeah.
interview, but I don't think we'll ever get a full edit.
I get it. I understand. It's how I feel about my production of The Great Gatsby.
Absolutely,
I put my heart and soul into that wee student production.
you did.
And to be fair, it was okay by the end.
It was better than 1984 June. I'd prefer to. I would have if I'd seen 1984
You went there
June
on
in
the
the
first
cinema.
night,
I
Claude.
probably would have walked out.
On the first night, the set changes took longer than the actual scenes of the play.
And also, last night wasn't much better.
It was the greatest heartbreak of my life.
I'm so sorry. I remember afterwards you were
Wait,
like,
are you being paranoid now?
"What do you mean?"
It wasn't. You didn't go both nights though. You can't compare it.
No, I didn't go the first night. I wasn't there the first night.
Yeah, so
No, I'm just saying it wasn't that good the best night. But you asked me at the time. I remember you were like, I was like, you were like,
Oh,
I
I
don't-
was fucking
you,
terrible.
you literally went to me. I don't want to hear what you've got to say, and I was like, I don't want to say what I've got to say. I'm glad you've not died doing this. I'm glad your actors actually made it onto stage because there was a big threat that some of them wouldn't.
yeah.
And I enjoyed some of it. I enjoyed some of the performances.
I just get it. I get how David Lynch
Yeah,
feels.
he was obviously absolutely gutted about it.
So ratings, not
yeah.
of Gatsby.
Not of Gatsby. My apologies. Not my apologies. She fucking brought it up. No
I
apologies
thought
from
it was
me.
great. 10 out of 10 from me for Gatsby.
Aww. Ah, fuck me. All right. We're rating Gatsby first then?
No.
No, I'm joking. Dune. You guys want to... Right, Abby, what did you give it?
Is it getting a wee room review from me?
Question mark? No, I feel like maybe... the thing is, I would watch this again before I would watch... There are other films that I've given like a 0 to on this podcast. What were they?
Now You See Me?
I didn't like Now You See Me. What did I
17 again.
17 again. I'd probably, well, I don't know.
Tall guy.
Tall Girl.
Tall girl.
I would watch this again before I would watch Tall Girl. I would maybe mute it and just like watch.
The vibes.
But I'm gonna give it a 3.
That sounds very reasonable, considering what we put you through this.
Based on just like the
Vibes.
idea was there. David Lynch has always got something interesting going on. Like it was a boring film, but there was always something like, oh.
No, why is that happening?
Weird.
Something inexplicable or like,
It was bad at telling this story, but there were still things about it that interested
yeah,
me.
because by the end of it, you were literally like, I'm trying to work this out. Why is the grandma angry? You're like, well, that's not the grandma, Abby. And it's like, But yeah, that's a reasonable score then, given all that. Although that is the same score that you gave Now You See Me, or did you give Now You See Me a 2?
I think I gave it a 2.
Cool, fair enough. What about yourself?
Dune 1984. I would give that a... It's one of those, you know... It's hard because I've obviously like compared it to the newer ones.
Yeah.
So I don't have it, because I think if I just saw it on its own,
You'd
it'd
be
be
like-
1, you know. But because I know what's going on, I'm sort of slightly biased in that sense. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it a 3 as well.
Fair
but
enough.
I think that if I had not seen
Dune.
Dune, it would be getting a 1.
So, right, for me, again, I like the Dune series. I love the mythos. I love the new films. And I really love some parts of this. And I really do genuinely enjoy the 40-minute longer version. It just makes more sense. You got to watch it in chunks. I'm never going to try and make you watch it.
No.
But it makes it better. They give you title cards and quotes. It makes a lot more sense. So, because of that biased opinion I have of Dune, any Dune project's generally going to get an extra. This one, anyway, for being bad, it's still going to get an extra 1 added on just because I know the wider stuff. So, for example, I would give Spice Diver, the new edit, the longer one, like an 8. Really, it's like a 7. This one is probably like a 5, but because I do love it a little bit, I'm probably going to give it a little bit of a 6. It is
A little bit of a 6.
a little bit of a 6.
I'm going to give it a little bit of a 6.
I'm going to give it a little bit of a 6. And again,
Fucking say it with your chest, man. Is it a 6 or no?
it's a fucking big old beefy 6. Dirty 6. It's not a dirty 6. It is. It's a shameful
Beefy
6.
6.
It's really a 5. Because a lot of it doesn't work.
So give it a 5.
No, but because it's Dune, David Lynch, and there's just a weird vibe going on in some scenes I genuinely enjoy-ish. 6. Like the Da Vinci Code. Interesting. I've given Dune and the Da Vinci Code both a 6.
Interesting that both of those films we spent a lot of time talking about religion.
And also, what's his name? Empire Records. Last 3 ones I've given 6s to, I believe. How strange is that? But for very different reasons.
Yeah.
So
The evil trilogy.
Look, let's be real. It's probably a 5. But
A little bit of a 6, beefy 5.
beefy 5, a little bit of a 6. So we'll give it a wee 6. A wee 6.
That could be such a funny Hinge bio.
What?
Beefy 5, a little bit of a 6.
That's fucking class.
I'm going to put the numbers up a wee bit though. I can't be sitting. If you posted anything about yourself being a 5 on the dating app, get off the app. So, aye.
So, thank you. Oh, and of course, the wee lassie. She's
Oh yeah, so
she's the rogue.
we always pick a rogue as we say. So I would say the wee lassie, Ally of the Knife
Kind
is
of
the
no
rogue.
competition.
Or would you say Toto as the soundtrack?
I think because we don't see Toto, and like there wasn't any moments where I was very like, this soundtrack is blowing my mind, except for when there's a guitar riff and they're on top of the worm. That's a bit obscene. But
Yeah.
the wee girl.
Yeah,
The wee
Ally
lassie.
of the Knife.
So, thank you so much for listening to the Sorry I Don't podcast. Next week we will return with another film that's my choice that I haven't decided on yet. So we will see you with that, and thank you again for listening.
Cheers, guys.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.